Hi, everyone. It's 7:32. My name is Brian Graham. I'm the County Chair of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, and I'm calling this meeting to order as we still have folks joining. Welcome to our last meeting of the 2020-2021 biennium. Recognized to speak or to make a motion. A webinar for questions, or if there's something that you want us to see. If you say something in chat, we may see it, or maybe not. But Q&A has, a feature to make sure that we mention everything, or to make sure that we look at everything. So if you do have an item that you would like us to see, please use the Q&A. And of course, if we do have a recorded vote, that is done by the Zoom poll feature. We may initiate a poll. If you are on a tablet or on a computer and the screen is being shared, you might have to exit full screen to see the voting window, and the voting window disappears after you submit. And we will share the results after the voting has concluded. And here we are now into the first item, or the agenda itself. Approval of the agenda and minutes. Are there any changes to the agenda or to the minutes? Seeing no changes to either, they are approved without objection, and we can move on to the introduction of special guests. And is our special guest here? Okay. Alrighty then. Well, we'll come back to our special guest then. We will suspend the rules and and come back to our special guest when he arrives. And let me see if I can get to the correct slide now to get to. So we'll just move on to our treasurer's report for now and come back. Let's see if I can get to, wow, look at that. Okay, treasurer's report. And we can recognize our own Nadia Golding, FCDC treasurer, for this report.
Okay, I'm unmuted now, right?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So, and you've got the thing you didn't get the thing I just sent you. So the only thing that's wrong in there is the district committee balances. So, okay, so the treasurer's report here is basically a high-level summary of where FCDC is at this moment, not including anything that we've brought in by credit card this month, which I'll talk about in a minute. But basically, it shows that we have at the FCDC, not including the district committees and some of our special funds, has about $92,000 in the bank. And then our district committees, that's where the error is. They have 80,000 in the bank, not 148,000. That's what they had a while ago before they spent a lot of money on this election. And I'm sorry, I sent Brian the wrong document at first. If we go to the next page, we can probably get a little better picture of things, but how each district is doing in terms of what they have. For district chairs who are going on, or people who hope to become new district chairs, all of the money that are in your federal, non-federal accounts now will be moved at the beginning of the year to your federal accounts, just because we can, and that way you can start out the year with only federal money, which will help you make your plans for a federal election year. One thing I did want to mention is that we've brought in a lot of membership dues that are not reflected in the treasurer's report at this point in time. And then so far, we've brought in about 29,500 in dues. And that represents about 420 people. Our budget for next year was sort of estimating 1,000 members, so we're less than halfway to that goal. So hopefully we will have a big uptick in the next week and a half or whatever time we have before December 1st, so that we can get closer to that goal before reorg. Of course, people will trickle in after reorg as well. Don't know if there are any questions about where we stand. Please let me know.
I just noticed the date on the top right. Of course, it's as of November 23rd.
11/2/39. Yeah, I was in a rush today, Brian, as you can tell.
I mean, it might only feel like the 239th day of November.
It was a really bad month, wasn't it?
Right. It's been a long month. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I will check again to see if we have our special guest. Looks like no. So I will continue on then with my report. So I guess I'll start my video and stop sharing my screen again. First, I just want to say on this week of Thanksgiving, thank you. Our members and our volunteers put in the work this election, knocking on doors, leaving door hangers, phone calls, text messages, postcards, and more. And because of that effort, Fairfax County is sending all 17 Democrats to the House of Delegates. There's a lot for us to learn from the results the last November beyond the obvious that Youngkin equals Trump is not a winning message. First, I don't know if everyone knows this, but this is the first time since 1969 that the candidate who won Fairfax County did not win the governorship. Fairfax County turnout was actually up. I know everyone kind of likes to complain about how everything went, right? But Fairfax County turnout was actually up about 5%. But turnout throughout much of rural Virginia was up even more across the board, 10 to 15% or even more, with Youngkin winning larger margins than even Trump. So that is to say that there were and there are more Democratic votes to squeeze out of Fairfax County in an election like this. But for Fairfax County to carry the state, the turnout here would have been, which was already high, would have been unprecedentedly high, like a presidential level, basically, for us to be able to carry the state. I will also note that Terry got 31,000 more votes than Northam in 2017. So the turnout was up, right? But instead of all of those votes going to Democrats, they almost went half and half to Youngkin. Actually, Youngkin got a little bit more than Terry did in the new votes compared to 2017. So obviously, we still have a lot of work to do. Three key takeaways from my perspective, and I think everyone's going to agree with the first one. We need better messaging. In particular, we cannot and must not let the Republican narrative go any further than with what I have written down doesn't make any sense. we cannot let the Republicans win the day when we're talking about public schools, right? We know that Democratic values and principles are better for public schools. We know that we were better for public schools, and we need to continue to fight that message. But in general, there are just lots of things that this campaign could have done better with messaging, and we need to do much better. We need to be better at filling in the gaps. There are highly Democratic precincts in Fairfax County where turnout was down a lot, 20% or more compared to 2017. We need to watch the campaigns more closely, understand where there are gaps, and help to fill them. And then lastly, we need a better ground game to fight for votes everywhere. And I know I've heard of a lot of complaints about the campaign locally, but trust me, we were much better off than most of the Commonwealth. And a lot of that, a good part of that was our own delegates running great campaigns here. But in statewide elections, we need to have operatives on the ground, knocking on doors, getting out the vote for an extended period of time, not just GOTV weekend, which happened in a lot of places in Virginia. And of course, TV ads are not a substitute. But we're heading into a new year. We have our slim majority in the Virginia Senate, and we'll need to support their efforts to defend voting rights and workers' rights, LGBT rights, and whatever else they will be coming after. Tyler said in chat, we can't be playing defense all the time. That's true. We are going to go on offense. We need to go on offense, right? And that starts with schools, but that's not the only thing that we need to go on offense on. And a lot of this efforts that we can do as FCDC start with rebooting into another 2 years of membership and leadership. So I was going to go into reorganization, and I will, but I'm going to kind of take as a moment of privilege, a moment to acknowledge our special guest, Chairman McKay from the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thank you very much, Brian, for having me. And just listening to the tail end of what you were saying, I think this is a difficult time for us as Democrats, but it shouldn't be a really difficult time for us as Fairfax County Democrats, because we do have a lot to be proud of. We're proud of, many of the statistical achievements that we had on election day. Even though we didn't win the governor's race, we certainly returned all of our delegates to office. Terry McAuliffe, of course, a Fairfax County resident, got 65% of the vote and carried a vote margin in Fairfax County of under 130,000 votes. And so we certainly did our part, even if the rest of the state didn't do their part. And that's something we should be, really very, very, very proud of, particularly because it was a difficult year, and particularly since the Republicans decided to attack our schools and scare people into believing things that aren't true. The idea that our residents aren't that naive to believe that, because they know what our leadership at a local level represents. They also know, what our values are in Fairfax County and why those are important. And they rejected those scare tactics on election day wholesale in Fairfax County. And so what that means for us is we're going to accelerate our efforts on playing offense. As some said, we have no reason to play defense. And as the press asked me about the election, if we were going to change our legislative package or our goals in Fairfax County, quite the contrary. We're emboldened to fight and fight harder than ever. And we will not stand for rollbacks in environmental protections and human rights and human services, in voting rights and gun restrictions, in school funding and public education and freedom in our public schools. These are our democratic values, and we will fight back any attempts in Richmond by this administration or by this next General Assembly as best we can from a Fairfax County standard. I'm so proud of the work that our board has done, taking advantage of a lot of past election success that we've had in Fairfax County. And let's not forget how different a Commonwealth it is today as a result of the past couple administrations, and most importantly, having a majority in the House. And we've got to protect those advancements we've made. And some of those advancements we've already been able to take care of and take advantage of a local level. Everything from banning guns from our election precincts and our public Fairfax County buildings. The minute we had a right to do that, we did that. We got to fight to make sure there's no rollbacks in that. When it comes to environmental protection, when we got the rights from Richmond to put in solar power and do some of the many things that we've been doing, including plastic bag tax and some of the other environmental initiatives that are so important to our future, we took advantage of that flexibility quickly so that we could implement laws and put them in place to protect our environment, protect our residents in Fairfax County. When we were allowed to endorse and pass a collective bargaining ordinance, our board jumped at that opportunity, worked out a great collective bargaining ordinance, the best one yet in Virginia, to set a standard for other localities. And we're going to fight like heck to keep that in place. That's a major advancement for our workers and our Fairfax County values. And so we're emboldened as ever. Affordable housing was a big issue for us at a local level. We're proud to have 1,900 affordable housing units in the pipeline. We're proud to have an environmental goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. We're proud to stand up and fight for our public educators and to make sure the story of our public schools gets told. I'm a parent of 2 FCPS students, and I got to tell you, I've never had a problem gaining access to my kids' schools, to our principals, to our teachers, to our school board members, to join our PTA, to get involved in our athletic boosters and arts clubs. Our schools have a welcome, opening door to parents all the time. But I'm not going to walk into a teacher's classroom and tell that professional how they ought to do their job. And if everybody in Fairfax County did that, we wouldn't have the stellar public school system that we have now. And so we're going to fight any attempt to take over our public schools by Richmond folks who don't understand education. We're going to stand with our professional teachers, with our PTAs, with our parents, and make sure that our fantastic public school system remains a fantastic public school system. Our parents get it. They know that. That's why they didn't fall for the bait that they were tempted with in the last election. And that's why the election numbers show what they are. When it comes to public safety, we're going to fight efforts to put school resource officers in elementary schools. It's an unfunded mandate. It makes absolutely no sense. It would cost the county tens of millions of dollars to do that. And we can put those resources to better use to protect our public. We have the lowest crime rate of any jurisdiction of our size in the country, the lowest crime rate of any jurisdiction in our region right now in the Washington metropolitan region. And we know how to do public safety. We're not going to let Richmond tell us how to do that. Finally, a couple other things at the local level we should be really proud of. The Human Rights Campaign puts out a scorecard every year, ranking and scoring jurisdictions across the country. And for those of you not familiar with the Human Rights Campaign, this is the LGBTQ scorecard. You know, how welcoming a community are you for people who need protections, frankly, in this world. And when I took office, our score in Fairfax County was 53% out of 100. Last year, we got up to 88%, and I said, we're not going to stop until Fairfax County is at 100%. And I'm proud to say this year, we finally achieved 100%, putting out there for folks to understand this is a welcoming, open, successful, financially successful, well-managed, democratic jurisdiction in Fairfax County that we are so proud of, and frankly, that people across the rest of the state could take a lesson or two from. And so I'm real proud of what we've accomplished, what our Democratic board has accomplished. I want to make sure none of you, not even for a second, think that this election that just happened isn't going to have consequences, because it will. But you need to know that we're going to fight like tooth and nail in Fairfax to hold on to the rights that we have from the state, that we took advantage of quickly, that the Democrats ushered in, that made Fairfax County and Virginia a more welcoming, better, more successful place. And if anything, it has emboldened us to continue the fight. Lastly, two last things I want to touch on. First, COVID. When you look at the COVID numbers in Virginia, the places where people aren't vaccinated is where the highest hospitalization and death rates are. You can be proud to live in a community that followed the science, that had a governor that didn't play games telling people how to trick the system and not get vaccinated. We're sitting at an over 80% vaccination rate, with schools safely open, our economy reopened and booming in Northern Virginia, because people here followed the science, they followed our advice, they got vaccinated, and that's why we're able to do things like have Thanksgiving with people we love again later this week, and to be able to go out and do normal things. That's something we can be proud of. Something, frankly, that hasn't happened in other parts of Virginia. And when people are attacking our schools, you can remind them we have amazing vaccination rates in our schools, and amazing educators, and an amazing community that believes in science, cares enough about each other to protect their lives, doesn't buy the political nonsense that's spread out there for political reasons to scare people. Just look at the success that we have. Our COVID response is built on a One Fairfax model. We're going to take care of our most vulnerable people, our workers who are out there on the front lines every day. We invested $40 million in Fairfax County in food, utility, and housing support for people who desperately need it, who were either out of jobs or were working on the front lines to protect our community. These are all really important things. And the reason I mention all of them in this laundry list of things is because elections matter. Democrats have been put in place in Fairfax County, and Democrats in Fairfax County will fight in Richmond and fight at the local level to make sure our values are not distorted by an administration that doesn't share them, because our success is because of those democratic values. And so I want to reassure you all of that. And then finally, at this time, as we approach the holidays, I also want to encourage each and every one of you to support the FCDC Foster Kid Drive. And for those of you not familiar with this, I was proud last year to co-sponsor this with my friend, Senator Barbara Favola. Last year, we raised over $47,000 for kids ages 10 to 21 who were in foster care. And this is so important this year. You can imagine how hard it would be to be in foster care. Now couple that with all the stress and chaos and challenges that our community has faced over the last 20 months. These kids need our support. They deserve to have a holiday season that, frankly, is normal, is like normal, as close to normal as possible. So I would encourage all of you, donate to this fund. The deadline is December 10th, as you can see. There's 3 easy ways to contribute. And let's send these kids a message that Democrats in Fairfax County care about them. We are the party that stands up and helps our vulnerable people. These are human beings that need our support, kids that are having a tough time. And let's send them a strong message about what our democratic values are and how we stand up and fight for these vulnerable kids. It's just our culture in Fairfax. So let's run this number up as high as we can this year. I'd encourage you to be generous and know that it will make a huge, huge difference in the lives of these kids moving forward. And so I wanted to thank you all for everything you did in the last campaign. As you know, campaigns are every year. So we already have to focus on next year. We have to focus on fighting this administration and the changes that could happen in Richmond, fight for our values and tell our success story. And most importantly, go on offense. We have a good record. We have good statistics, nothing to hide, only great successes here that we need to share with the public. So we're, at least this Democrat, and I hope the rest of you are going to be playing offense in a way stronger than we ever have before, because we've got the statistics, we've got the values, we've got the success stories to show for it. So hold your heads high. Know there's another election, and know in our county, we did the right thing, and we're going to continue to do the right thing moving forward. So thank you all. Have a great, safe, happy Thanksgiving, holiday season. Support the Kids Drive at FCDC. And reach out at any time if there's something we can be doing in Fairfax County better. But so proud of what we've been able to do over the last 2 years, and know that we're not going to stop. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chairman McKay. I know there were some good applause lines in there. If we were in the room, I know we would have been clapping for. So we really appreciate your work, and thank you for your support of the Foster Teen Drive as well.
Sure. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you. All right. So okay, there we go. So to get back into my report with our little excursion there, I kind of finished with a thought of, looking forward. We're going into reorganization. We have opportunities to be some of the change that we want to see in terms of messaging, going on offense, and that starts with our reorganization. Every 2 years, because DPVA tells us to, and that's the Democratic Party of Virginia in its governing document, say that county committees and city committees reorganize between December 1st and January 15th of the following year, every 2 years. So that's happening. All members must rejoin if they'd like to remain members, and all leadership positions are up for election. If you haven't already done it, reapply to be a member of FCDC. Go to fairfaxdems.org/join. Membership fees are still at $75 for 2 years for voting members and $40 for associate members. Obviously, the two types of memberships are still available. If you're at a meeting like you are right now, I generally recommend that you reapply as a voting member. And I just will remind everyone that there are responsibilities of being a member of our county committee, and that includes not publicly endorsing any candidate opposed to a Democratic endorsee or nominee. But voting members also have the obligation to come to meetings, at least one meeting every 120 days. So fee waivers are available if you are unable to pay. Reach out to your current district chair if you need a waiver. Applications are due to be part of the reorganization. We don't cut off membership. We will add additional members, but to be part of the votes for new district chairs and new FCDC leaders, you have to have your application in by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, December 1st, and it must be complete. And that means that the payment has to be completed or that a waiver has to be completed for it to be considered. So don't wait, apply today, especially if you need a waiver. Start working on that now because it might take some time to get the form from your district chair. And I'm going to hit everyone over the head a little bit with some of this. You can also see this on the FCDC website, fairfaxdems.org/reorg. But step one, apply for membership. Everyone seeking membership has to apply if they want to participate in reorganization by 5 p.m. on December 1st. From December 9th to December 11th, we will hold virtual caucuses if necessary. So if any of the districts have overfile, that means more people are seeking to be FCDC members than we have spaces for. There will be a virtual unassembled caucus of Democratic voters. People will go to the FCDC website. If they are a registered voter in that district, a district that's having the caucus, they can fill in their information and they will get an electronic ballot that they can complete. People who don't have a computer or have issues with that can also call the FCDC office. I say that this is if necessary. If in the last kind of decade, I don't think we've had any district caucuses. They do happen sometimes though. So it's just, we had to have rules out and a call for all of this just because that's kind of how the process works. But just going from past experience, the caucuses are not held. After that time, we will, the reason that we're waiting until December 9th for that is because on December 7th, the Board of Supervisors is meeting to decide on the redistricting boundaries for Fairfax County. So I am not anticipating huge changes in our district boundaries, but we will see what happens on December 7th. And in the new boundaries are the boundaries that will apply for reorganization. So that's why we're not having any votes or kind of deciding whether we're overfiled until December 9th. Assuming that caucuses aren't necessary, then really the next step is just the district reorganization meetings. And I think people probably have been to these before for the most part, unless you're new. Each district is going to hold a meeting to elect district officers and approve associate members. And I will go on the next slide. I will show you which days which districts are on. And then lastly, or maybe not completely lastly, but the county, the full county committee will reorganize on January 11th, 2022, next year at 7:30 p.m. That will be a virtual meeting, and voting members from across the county will meet to elect FCDC leadership for the next 2 years and also consider potential revisions to the bylaws. So just to hit you over the head one more time with some of this. Step one, applications are due by 5 p.m. On Wednesday, December 1st. December 7th is the redistricting meeting. That'll give us a day or two to make sure we figure out where everyone is in districts and to determine whether or not we need to have caucuses anywhere. If we do have caucuses, they will start on Thursday, December 9th at 10 a.m. and end at noon on December 11th. Those are virtual caucuses again, and you will go to the FCDC website to participate. And then from December 14th to 16th, the districts are having their reorganization meetings. All of them have a virtual component, so you can attend by Zoom if you choose. And two of the districts, Braddock and Mount Vernon, have added a in-person option as well, hybrid option. So Mount Vernon, Mason, and Sully are on December 14th. Springfield, Braddock, and Hunter Mill are on the 15th, and Providence, Dranesville, and Lee are on the 16th. Each day, the first name that it is said is at 7 p.m. and the other two are at 7:30 p.m. You can go to the FCDC calendar to see those, or hopefully you'll also get emails with that information as well. And then the last part that's not on this calendar, because it's almost a month later, the virtual county reorganization is Tuesday, January 11th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. The other thing that happens after that, after you have a new FCDC chair, they will appoint people to reconvene the standing committees and caucuses. So after we have a new chair, they will appoint people to convene those meetings, and within the next month or so, after the 11th, most of those standing committees and caucuses that we have will have their first meetings and elect their own leadership as well. So I know I just said a whole bunch, but I don't see any questions in the Q&A. I do see a hand raised, but I don't know if it's intentional. But I will allow Marv and or Sue Rosenberg to talk if that's their desire. No, I think I see the hand down again. So, okay, so I think that's it. I guess since I was asked, the steering committee meeting usually would be on the 14th, but because it's in the middle of the reorganization, we're actually going to have the steering committee meeting on December 7th. And hopefully we'll know, we can talk a little bit about district changes on the 7th that evening. But that's not on this calendar because I didn't want to clutter it. But I think that's it for me. Thank you so much again. And I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving, and we can move on to our vice chair and committee and caucus reports. And if you are a vice chair or committee or caucus and you haven't already told me that you want to speak, or if I haven't assumed that you want to speak, please send me a message. Oh, okay. There was a question real quick about caucus leadership process. Each of the so caucuses and standing committees will have a meeting where so one, you have to, when you join FCDC, there's check boxes you can put to say you want to be a member of a caucus that will put you as a member of the caucus. We will have a meeting of the members of each of the caucuses that will be called by me and someone at my, or I guess the FCDC chair, if not me, and the members of that caucus will elect their own leadership. So that will happen sometime after January 11th, probably in the late January to February time frame for all of the standing committees and caucuses. We do not meet in December, and we only meet every other month as a county. But your district committees may or may not meet in December. December is a tricky time with the holidays, so you can check the FCDC calendar for those things. But I am going to move on now to our vice chair and committee caucus reports. If you have other questions, send something in the Q&A or send me an email, and we'll get back to you. All right, so vice chair, committee, and caucus reports, and I don't know if Tina does have her hand raised. Tina Barczyk, the vice chair of finance for FCDC, I am acknowledging first.
Hi, everyone. I just want to remind everyone that we are having our holiday celebration, and it is a winter wonderland. It will be outside, and it will be a ton of fun. We're going to have fire pits and fire warmers everywhere, and hot drinks, hot chocolate, s'mores. It's just going to be a fantastic time. We're also going to accept donations for the gift drive, So hopefully everybody will join us on Sunday, December 5th from 2 to 4 p.m. We're really looking forward to it. We really do have a wonderful outdoor celebration in store. And if the weather permits, there will be boat rides available. So we're looking forward to everyone coming, and get your tickets to the FCDC holiday party, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Tina. Next, I would like to recognize Karen Sever on behalf of the Education Standing Committee.
Hi, Brian. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Ed Committee, for giving me this opportunity to share. Thank you, Brian, for your earlier comments on messaging. And thank you, Chairman McKay, for your continued commitment to families, because that's exactly why I asked to speak tonight. So my children are still young, but Mike and I made this long-term investment to move to this county and participate and enjoy the education and benefits here. So I feel that it's my responsibility to my family, my children, and my community to share my perspective that we need to activate families with school-age children in Fairfax. The rhetoric on the right, it continues to be anti-LGBTQIA+, anti-equity for marginalized students, anti-diversity, anti-inclusion, and ableist. There's talk of banning and even burning books, banning inclusivity and diverse perspectives in curriculum, targeting teachers and librarians. They're sending death threats to our school board members and people who speak out, and we're letting them get away with it. The loud voices of the few, they're drowning out the many because we're not amplifying the voices of families in Fairfax. We all know that public education is the bedrock of democracy, right? But the fight is less about public education and more about the GOP rallying support of families, spreading misinformation and lies, and funding bad actors who are whipping up parents and ultimately turning them into GOP voters. So a small group of families, we have done what we could with the resources that we had to be advocating for our children, our school board, our teachers, public education, and our democracy. And we've been sounding this alarm since summer 2020. We created documents and leaflets in the hopes that they'd be distributed widely to raise awareness, but they didn't really get very far. So I now call upon FCDC, this organization, to support and reach out to families of school-age children in Fairfax, both within and outside of the organization, because subgroups like Parents for Snyder and then ultimately Parents for Youngkin energize center-left and independent voters through outreach and that targeted engagement. And we really need to do the same now. We just finished the election cycle. I know we're tired, but if we don't build the foundation to activate families who believe in democracy and public education, we're going to lose voters and ultimately elections. These folks have their eyes set on the Board of Supervisors, Commonwealth's attorney, and then beyond that, they want to flip the Congress, the Senate, delegates. They want to take over our school board, and they will continue to use this momentum to their advantage. Part of FCDC's mission is to register Democratic voters and get out the vote, right? So activating Fairfax families of school-age children accomplishes both of these goals. Please focus a portion of the Get Out the Vote effort specifically on families in Fairfax. We need this effort to start with leadership and steering and then transmit itself through the districts and subcommittees across FCDC. We all have good intentions, right? Of course we do. And in order to harness all of the efforts of us as individuals, we need that kind of coordination. And we need to actively recruit members of members with school-age children who can then work within their networks and share and activate their communities. So, perhaps a more formal request to speak out to everyone should have come earlier, but I can't let another election cycle go by without saying this here and now and without asking for this help. Elections have consequences, and we all know that these attacks will turn into actions emboldened by policies enacted by our new governor. We need to do everything that we can to support and protect families, children, our teachers, the school board, and our access to equitable, inclusive public education. So thank you for this time to speak, and I welcome really any further comments from FCDC members, and anyone is welcome to reach out to me. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Karen. I just want to add this has to be a focus for FCDC over the next year or two, right? So, so I appreciate you trying to get people involved, and I hope we can focus our energy and efforts into that next year.
Thank you.
So thank you. Next, I would like to recognize Russ Bykoff, the chair of the Environmental Standing Committee for FCDC.
Thanks, Brian. I unmuted myself. I hope you did the same thing to me.
Yes.
Good. Hello, everybody. We are in a very different political climate than we thought we would be in as your environmental committee coming into the new General Assembly session in January. We radically have changed our plans as a result, and our focus now is quite ironically going to be on a handful of our Fairfax County state senators. We are planning to establish small groups to meet with some of the key senators from Fairfax, who we expect and we will ask to be a bulwark against any Republican efforts to water down the landmark environmental legislation that our Democratic General Assembly passed over the last 2 years and our Democratic administration signed into law, Governor Northam. I'm speaking about the Virginia Clean Economy Act, known as the VCEA. There's a regional greenhouse gas initiative, which creates a sort of cap and trade system for power plants that pollute. We're also concerned about a budget to fund energy initiatives, and possibly working as well on the clean car legislation that created some state incentives for electric vehicles. So the plan is to put together small groups of people to meet with these key senators in December and January. We would like to get members of this committee who live in the districts of Senators Zaslaw, Barker, Marsden, and Surivel. Please let us know of your interest in coming to a meeting with your senator. We need people who are their constituents, otherwise they will not take us as seriously as they should. We will also be attending these meetings, which incidentally, Chris Lemenestrel, whom many of you know, and who's the vice chair of the Environmental Committee, is putting together with leading environmental organizations, both nationally known and active at the state and local levels. So this is a major initiative of our committee. We need your help. Please reach out to me or to Chris if you are a constituent of those aforementioned senators, and we will sign you up, I hope, to, with your permission, to come along to the meetings that we expect to have very soon to defend our landmark legislation and not allow the Republicans to roll back environmental protections. And then when the time's right, we will switch from defense and go back on offense. When their momentum fades and drops, we'll grab the ball, we'll send out the offensive team, and we'll elect Democrats and resume our march on environmental progress. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Russ. Next, I'd like to recognize Sandra Clausen, Chair of the National Affairs Standing Committee.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everybody. The last time we met was just prior to our October 7th National Affairs Healthcare Forum. I wanted to share with you that it was quite well received. We had 300 registrants sign up, and we received all kinds of exuberant reviews. I'm going to quote some quotes: "A truly excellent and educational event. Bravo. This forum was absolutely superb." And although the forum was free, we did receive over $600 in donations for FCDC. the forum featured a number of experts on healthcare policy and 3 congresspeople, our Congressman Beyer and Scott, and a Congresswoman Jayapal also joined. As you know, she was the person who introduced the bill on Medicare for All, and Congressman Scott and Beyer were co-sponsors. We had professors from Harvard and economists from Massachusetts. It was quite an in-depth forum, and we do have the video now available, which I will try to paste into the chat. I find I have a lot of trouble pasting anything to the webinar chats, but I will try. But I highly recommend viewing it. There's a lot of good information in it. So thank you all. Appreciate it. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thanks, Sandra. I know I have state and local still pending, but I want to go to them last. So are there any other committees? Oh, Eddie, sorry. Oh, go ahead, Eddie Eiches, chair of the Labor Caucus.
Yes, I wanted for sure to recognize the efforts of Chairman McKay in getting the Board of Supervisors to pass 9-1 the ordinance in reference to collective bargaining. I can't say the same, and I was surprised even at Ms. Seaver's comments that she didn't mention that we still have pending a collective bargaining ordinance with the education, with the school board, and we've actually attempted to get some representative from the school board to meet with the caucus, and so far the efforts have been futile. We are aware, and the 2 presidents of the largest teacher board of, school board, largest teacher and support staff unions are part of our caucus and are very, very active. And we're very, very committed to having a strong ordinance, which we believe will frankly stop any type of book burning, et cetera. But we want to make sure that when the FCDC talks about education, it talks about collective bargaining too. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Tina, I see you have your hand raised again. Is that intentional or no?
I didn't lower my hand. I'm sorry, Brian. I will lower it now.
No worries. Kelly Hebron. I think I've got your picture in here somewhere. Sorry, Eddie. I didn't have you
It's all good.
Pre-set up. Kelly, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Hebron. I am chair of Lead District Dems and also chair of Black Caucus. The announcement tonight is that the Black Caucus will be having its monthly meeting on December 5th at 7 p.m. We will be joined by guest Congressman Beyer, as well as a few other special guests to discuss a debrief of the election. We too are concerned with the outcome, and we're looking to have an open discussion. All are welcome. The meeting's in 2 weeks. We will have it on the calendar as well as prepare a Zoom link. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Kelly. Last call for committee reports and caucus reports before I move to state and local. Okay. Then let's go ahead and move into state and local report. And I'm going to allow Nordell, chair of the State and Local Affairs Committee, to speak.
Thanks, Brian. So as you guys know, we have a resolution up for debate in just a second here. And so I wanted to use my time to actually turn over the floor to Judd Richland, who is from Compassion and Choices, who we've been working on this resolution with for a brief presentation on what it's about and some of the research behind it. So Brian, I don't know if we have those slides.
I do.
Great.
Yeah, I do. I do like that I don't know why I have the Kate picture of you in here, but
I don't know why you guys have that. That's an old picture.
But it's a great picture anyway. Okay. I think Judd should be able to speak now, and I have slides. Judd, just let me know when you'd like me to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, Brian?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you. I've been a volunteer for several years with Compassion and Choices. Compassion and Choices is the leading national organization that advocates for giving terminally ill adults access to the full range of medical options as the end of life approaches. I'd begin by saying, I suppose, that most of us don't know for sure how we'll react when we know that we're approaching death. When you're healthy, it can be hard to imagine how well you'll be able to tolerate severe disability or pain. And many people, probably even most, who are facing the prospect of an imminent death are willing to accept serious pain or reduced quality of life in order to buy more time. And at the same time, lots of people would choose a different path if they could, or at least they would like the comfort of having other options available to them. And so one of those options, which is not currently legal in Virginia, is medical aid in dying, which I may sometimes refer to as MAID or MAID. So next slide, Brian. So medical aid in dying refers to the medical practice of terminally ill adults requesting a prescription from their doctor so that they have the option of ending their pain and suffering by taking their own life at the time and place of their choosing. MAID is now legal in 10 states and DC, and we have been working for several years in Virginia to educate legislators about medical aid in dying. Delegate Kay Corey has been our primary legislative champion, having introduced bills a couple of times to legalize MAID. Next slide. So there's lots of research that tells us how people want to die. We know that people want to be at home with their loved ones. They want to be as comfortable and pain-free as possible. They want to have their spiritual needs and values respected, and they don't want to be a burden on their loved ones. Next slide. Unfortunately, the way that people actually die in America is typically different from how they want to die. Something like 18% of Americans have surgery in the last month of life. Nearly 10% have surgery in the last week of life. Most people don't die at home. Most people die in a hospital or in a long-term care facility. And people often accept tests and treatments near the end of life that increase pain and discomfort, but often don't do anything to prolong life. Next slide. So now, if you live in Virginia, you do have a number of options available to you if you are terminally ill and approaching the end of life. You can, of course, accept all treatment interventions to extend your life as long as possible. And even if you do want to accelerate the dying process, you actually do have several legal options. You can refuse medical treatment, including turning off any life supports like respirators or heart-lung machines. You can stop eating and drinking to accelerate the dying process. You can stop active treatment and enter hospice care or palliative care to reduce your pain and suffering. Next slide. And so while there are legal ways to accelerate the dying process, the one right that you don't have is the right to die peacefully where and when you choose. In other words, medical aid in dying. Next slide. So, let's just talk for a minute about how medical aid in dying actually works. So first of all, in order to be eligible to use MAID in states where MAID is legal, you have to be a terminally ill adult meaning you have to be at least 18 years old and have a prognosis of less than 6 months to live. You have to be mentally capable of making an informed decision about using Aid and Dyne, and you have to be able to self-ingest the medication. Next slide. The actual process for obtaining a prescription is actually fairly involved and is constructed in a way to make sure that the process isn't abused. So first, 2 doctors typically have to certify that the patient is terminally ill, mentally competent, and making the request voluntarily. A couple of states actually have recently changed their laws so that instead of requiring doctors to make those certifications, you have to have you may have other licensed healthcare providers, like nurses, for example, to make those certifications. The healthcare provider is required to inform the patient of all healthcare options. Patients are required to make multiple requests for a prescription. Thank you for advancing that slide. In most states, the requests have to be separated by at least 15 days. And I would editorialize to say that to me, this is actually quite a cumbersome requirement. And in fact, a lot of patients die before they are able to make the second request. And then, of course, even after a patient receives the medication, they can change their mind at any time about ingesting the medication. And every MAID statute has a conscience clause, meaning that participation for individual healthcare providers is voluntary. No one can be disciplined for choosing not to participate. Next slide. So there have been lots of national and state polls about medical aid and dying, and they have consistently shown broad support, usually on the order of 65 to 70% support. Last year, Christopher Newport University conducted a poll of Virginians and found majority support for MAID across every age group, gender, race, political party, and religious denomination. So as I mentioned, Delegate Corey has been our primary legislative advocate. Unfortunately, the election results mean that realistically, nothing will happen in the House of Delegates in the next session. I do think legislation is likely to be introduced in the Senate in 2022. We know that there is broad support for MAID among Democratic legislators, although not quite unanimous support. And I think the biggest challenge still is to find one or a couple of Republicans who support legalizing MAID. So I would just wrap up by saying that I think the most powerful argument for legalizing MAID remains that terminally ill, mentally capable adults should have the right to make decisions for themselves about the end-of-life medical care that is consistent with their own values and beliefs. And while MAID may not be for everyone, it should certainly be one of the medical care options available to terminally ill adults as they approach the end of life. And that concludes my presentation, Brian. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Judd. I think just to give some context to the discussion that we're about to have in our old section, old business section. Let me make sure I'm not missing. I feel like I see a hand raised. Okay, so that concludes our part of the meeting about Vice Chair Committee and Caucus reports, and we'll get into old business. I will just remind everyone, use the raise your hand button to indicate if you would like to be recognized to speak or make a motion. Use the Q&A for questions. Use the Q&A for questions, or if you want to send us a message. We need the motion on the floor before we can have people speak in favor of support. But that will happen momentarily. And then, of course, again, we use the Zoom poll feature for voting. And you may need to exit the full screen view to access the voting window. So with that, we can now for consideration from the committee. Of course, this is already on the floor and was referred to this meeting by a previous general meeting, and I'll pull over the full meeting. Why can't I talk right now? The full resolution or text of the resolution as well. But and scroll through it. But the resolution is for the FCDC supporting end-of-life care, including medical aid in dying. And therefore be it resolved reads that the Fairfax County Democratic Committee expresses our strong support for end-of-life care, including medical aid in dying, and respectfully requests the Fairfax County delegation to the General Assembly to legalize access to this important compassionate option for the terminally ill by sending this legislation to the Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee, chaired by Mark Sickles, for a vote before advancing to the full General Assembly in the next legislative session. I would like to again recognize Sandra has asked me to restate that we have special rules for consideration of resolutions. We have the debate is limited total to 20 minutes. We are supposed to alternate people for and against if they are available, and no person shall speak for more than 2 minutes. And as the chair of the original referring committee of this resolution, I will now recognize Nora Dell for up to 2 minutes.
Thanks, Brian. I just wanted to say that this passed our committee much earlier this year at this point with a unanimous vote, and it also passed the steering committee with a nearly unanimous vote. And yeah, that we fully endorse the contents of it and think this is an important reform. And that we just want to support with this resolution our our House of Delegates delegation. I forgot what the word was. With this resolution to allow our delegates to build support for it and just demonstrate our grassroots support for it. And yeah, I think that for the last point, we wrote this before the election happened. And so it looks like Mark Sickles will probably no longer be the chair of the Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee. But the resolution still sort of serves to support our delegation on this issue regardless. And I know that it also helps Judd's organization as well in demonstrating that Democrats support it. So I hope that we have your vote in support of it as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Nora. The only other person I see asking to speak at this moment is Patricia McGrady, who I will allow to or recognize to speak for up to 2 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Patricia McGrady. I'm a good Democrat. I'm an associate member of the Fairfax Democrats, and I am also a strong member of the Compassion and Choices, as is Judd, who just spoke. I live at Greenspring. I'm 85, about to be 86. I'm currently able-bodied, but I very much feel I need and want the ability to choose to end my life if I am in a bad condition. And that's really all I wanted to say, that I hope you will vote for it.
Thank you, Patricia. Is there any other discussion, or if there is none, we can call the question. Okay, seeing no additional discussion, we will issue. I think it'll be just easiest just to issue a poll. So we will issue the poll for medical aid in dying resolution. Let me stop sharing to maybe help see that. And please you vote yes or no. Or don't vote at all if you would like to abstain. So about 80% of you have participated or have voted so far. I'm going to give another 15 seconds or so. So if you have not voted and you'd like to vote, please cast your vote now. Okay, seeing no additional votes, we can end the poll and share the result. And the motion to adopt the resolution easily carries 89% of those voting in favor. Thank you very much for bringing this forward. I think a lot of people have been interested in this. So thank you. The next, so that concludes our old business. And now we have, that didn't work out exactly. Oh, there we go. And now we are into new business, and I believe referred to us from the Youth Affairs Standing Committee. Did we not share the results? Maybe we did. Okay. Is a resolution endorsing the creation of inclusive courses, and I would like to recognize Sehi Perez to speak on the motion. And I do note that, Sandra, I think we're kind of missing a title or something. So we have a little bit of formatting work to do, but I think we're aware of that, and we can do that. So of course, if you want to read this on your own computer, you can go to the FCDC website and or on our emails and read the resolution. So go ahead, Sehi, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so to introduce myself first, my name is Sehi Perez. I am the chair of the FCDC Youth Affairs Standing Committee, as well as the Virginia Democrats Teen Caucus. So this is one of our big priorities for the Teen Caucus this upcoming session, in collaboration with DAV and DLove. To provide more context, it's modeled after the process we use to get African American history courses in schools around Virginia. So the way that was passed was that the governor created an executive order to have a panel develop African American history curriculums, and then that panel recommended that creation. And overall, in just 1 year, it spread to 30 localities. And I know in FCPS, it's also being offered as a course. For clarification, we are not modeling this after the Illinois bill, which requires every single history class to add an aspect of API or Latino history, because for curriculums with a nationwide standard, for example, the AP curriculum, there's little to no leeway to add extra courses that won't be tested on. And we don't want to water down minority history, which is so rich and valuable to our country, into a 1 or 2 day lesson in each history class. So overall, we are calling on the General Assembly to pass legislation this next session that will create a separate API and Latino history course around schools in Virginia. So to provide more context as to why we need it, it's ethnic studies, studies have shown that ethnic courses allow students to participate more. It leads to higher GPAs, more classroom discussion, and overall just higher performance in schools. And I think we can all agree, or at least I hope we can all agree, that we want our kids to succeed in schools. And this is going to be an integral part in making sure that students, especially students of minority backgrounds, are able to, first off, learn their own history, but also be in a setting where they are able to learn about history that isn't typically represented. And the fact that Virginia has already made so much progress in offering minority history curriculums, that I feel like now it is time for an Asian American and Latino American option.
Okay, thank you, Sehi. Sandra Clausen did ask in chat, and I think it was pointed out in the email, because we sent this out for the first time yesterday, that because it was sent out with fewer than 7 days notice, it does require a 2/3 majority to pass today. So that's just an important thing to note. And I see one hand raised, so I'm assuming it is for discussion of this. So I will recognize Andy Pavord.
Oh, just want to say, I think it's a great resolution. I'm sorry, but I hit the button by mistake. I'm sorry, but it's a great resolution. I fully support it.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Again, if you do want to, if others do want to speak on this resolution, either for or against, either raise your hand or send a Q&A message. I will next recognize Jeffrey Barnes for up to 2 minutes.
All right, so I've just unmuted myself. Thank you so much. I'm against this resolution. We could have this as every organization or group of people who feel that they need special permission. We could have a Muslim, a Jewish, a Korean, an African, and I believe that we ought to incorporate this into the American history and not have it subdivided into separate entities. The more we splinter ourselves, the less we are an American human being or an American country. We become islands of our own recognition. I believe this is detrimental to the American concept, and I speak against it, and I will not vote for its consideration tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Next is Delegate Mark Keem.
Yeah, hey everyone, good evening everyone. It's good to hear from some of you, and I'm sorry that we're not meeting in person, but I look forward to the next opportunity. I'm in a car, I'm not driving, but I'm in a car, so it might be a little bit noisy and I'm gonna have to unmute myself after I speak. But first, let me thank Sehi and all the young people who worked on this resolution. I believe it's a good and timely concept and certainly a good policy for our Commonwealth to support. And respectfully from the context of the gentleman just spoke right before, I agree that all of us should be Americans and American history should be taught. But if there's one thing we learned over the last couple of years, it's that American history is taught by people who have a view of what American history means. And the whole point here is not only as America is diversifying, but as we look back at the 400 years of very rich and very robust and diverse history, we want to make sure that every aspect of American history is taught. You can't have one version that's based on one person's viewpoint being taught and not everybody else's. And so from the perspective of many immigrants, including about 8% of Americans today who are Asian Pacific Islanders, the history of our peoples and people that are of my background are simply very, very minuscule if there's any robust aspect of that. So the effort here by Sehi and others is to ensure that all of American history, good and bad, as well as all the ethnic aspects of it, are all taught in a way that it can be part of the American fabric. And so I think it's a great idea. As to the resolution specifically saying that legislation should be introduced this coming session and passed by the General Assembly, that might be a little bit tough just because the new governor and the folks that came into the majority in the House campaigned on something that's quite different from my viewpoint and my values, which is to say that no history should be taught, let alone racial aspect of history should be taught. So I think we might have a little bit of a challenge in the General Assembly, but the concept and the spirit behind this resolution is excellent. I support it. I want to thank Sehi for doing this. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Delegate. I can't tell if people want to speak for or against. If you do want to speak against, send me a message so that I can slot you in so that it's not one-sided. So next I will recognize Zachary Lincoln for up to 2 minutes.
Okay, y'all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Zach Lincoln. I'm on the Education Committee and also Social Media Director for Virginia Teen Democrats, which is another one of our organizations. So to make it quick, as a student, I see like that representation matters. Like if we teach the stuff, like the resolution points out that students are more engaged and empowered. So I definitely think that is something that can be worked on. And since that Fairfax not only has like a larger than average Asian American and Latino population, we're also the most populous county here in the Commonwealth. So we should set an example for the school district. So I strongly urge the committee to vote yes and pass this resolution. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Zach. Next is Ariane Rawal.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Aryan. I am a lifelong FCPS student, and I also support this resolution. I want to talk a little bit about why we can't incorporate these courses just into our normal American history courses. The reality is that our AP teachers and our history teachers in this county are incredibly overworked. I mean, it is incredibly challenging from going to 17th century history to the 2020 election in our history classes. And I TA with history teachers at my school. I have seen the struggle to even get to from that 17th century mark to the 2020 mark. And so there is just no way that you can discuss the incredible diversity, the incredibly rich history, and the incredibly nuanced history in the Asian American and Latino American communities within American history courses without sacrificing something else in the American education history courses. And it's just so unfair to teachers to expect them to make those choices. That's why it's so important that these classes are separate. They are a complex field of study. They just can't be a one-day topic. I'm also saying this as an Asian student. The word Asian has never been mentioned in my education, even though Asian Americans have made incredible contributions to this country. That needs to change, and we need to recognize that history. And so I'm asking all of you to support this just because we deserve to be heard.
Thank you, Ariane. Next, it looks like Camila Alfonso Mesa.
Hello, can you all hear
Hi.
me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, I'm going to speak in favor of this resolution. So if we have too many people who have done that already, I'm happy to not.
I mean, I'm looking at the people left. I don't know. I'm assuming the people that are left are speaking in favor, although I don't know Larry well enough. So, and I think Matt Bell wants to call the question. So, so I appreciate your support.
Okay, I just want to say one thing though.
Okay.
I want to push back on the idea that expanding the way that we teach history and adding nuance and additional options waters down what it means to have American history, especially as not only an immigrant, but a recent citizen. I think that the more we learn about the people who live in our country, the better that we are. And it does us a disservice to not provide those options to our students. So I think this is great. We should vote for it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll recognize Sabrina Matten, who is also co-chair of our API caucus.
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much. I am also speaking for this resolution. And I'm sorry, I was responding to a chat message. So I believe that it is very important. I want to reiterate what Sehi had mentioned earlier, whereas currently in history classes, I mean, I was a former FCPS student. I did K through 12, and it's really hard to put everything in there. And a lot of the curriculum that does focus on minorities such as Asian Americans and Latino Americans, there's not enough time for us to really delve deeper into that. So I believe that this is extremely necessary. Understanding these histories will continue to grow in importance as the US continues to grow in diversity and as our participation in the global economy continues to grow. And I think that we need to stop being afraid of what Republicans will say, because if that's the only reason that we're not fighting for our values, we're just hurting ourselves. We're losing twice. Thank you.
I think Larry Lipolis is next.
Yeah, and I put my comment into the chat session. I like the idea of offering courses that focus on certain groups in our country that are underrepresented in our traditional American history courses or even our world history courses. But I assume that if we do this, and even though the resolution doesn't say anything about it, these courses would be offered as electives. And the concern I have about that is you will get the people to sign up for those courses who are not necessarily the people that we really want to expose to these other groups or expose these other groups to. So I think the resolution should also encourage the inclusion of more information about these groups in the history courses that most of the students will be taking.
Okay, thank you. The only other hand I see raised is Matt Bell, and I believe Matt wants to call the question. So if that's the case, there aren't other speakers, we can just move forward with the actual vote.
Sorry, Brian, I was doing it in the chat. First, a comment. I think this is a great resolution. Secondly, I think we'd be here all night with everyone speaking in favor of it, and I think the speakers did a great job. So I'd like to make a motion to end the discussion and call to question on this resolution.
Okay, there's a motion to end discussion. Is there any objection to ending discussion? I think I see I think I see a hand raised potentially as an objection. So I believe we need to actually have a vote to end discussion. Do we have a vote ready for that, or probably not? So in a moment we'll have, so just from parliamentary procedure, because the motion was made to end discussion and was seconded, we need to have a vote on whether or not discussion will end at this point. So in a moment I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and we'll have a Zoom poll ready to, so at this point, vote on whether or not discussion shall be ended on this question, and we can move forward with consideration. So just to be clear, this is not voting for the motion. This is just voting to end discussion. And with more than 75% of folks voting so far, last call for votes.
Okay, well, Brian, then my second motion would be to call the question.
Well, you're out of order because that's the motion that's already on the floor. Okay, so ending the poll here, we have 4 people vote against ending the discussion, and 97% of people voting for. So the discussion is now ended, and now we can now the actual now we can no longer discuss the motion, but we need to actually vote on the motion. So the inclusive classes resolution poll will go out now. To be clear, this is we are voting on whether or not we will adopt the resolution on inclusive classes, and restating it, therefore be resolved that the Fairfax County Democratic Committee endorses the creation of Asian American and Latino American courses in secondary schools in Virginia, and strongly urges the General Assembly to pass legislation developing Asian American and Latino American history courses in the upcoming 2022 legislative session. Most folks have voted at this point. I'll give another 15 seconds or so for voting. And so please make your final selections if you haven't done that yet. Okay, ending the poll and sharing the results. 89% of those voting were in favor of the motion, and and 11% voted against. So the motion carries by more than the 2/3 threshold necessary, and the resolution is adopted. There is a question just in general. I mean, if you do have questions that are not necessarily discussion, you can still ask questions in discussion. So if we had a question about the resolution in general, or how it would be implemented, that it would be appropriate to ask that during the discussion of the resolution. But there is a question, and I don't know if any of the folks that we've recognized already can answer it, about how curriculum would be developed for for courses like this, if there are current standards, et cetera. So I don't know if there is an answer for that, or if not, we can move on. But thanks for the Youth Affairs Committee for putting that together. Arian, did you have an answer to that, or?
Yeah, so a lot of this does depend on how the bill is carried in the General Assembly and how it's voting on. With that said, ethnic study classes in Virginia is not a new concept. We do it with African American history. That's been implemented over 30 localities. And essentially what usually happens is that the General Assembly or the governor will convene a body of respected academics and university professors who will develop a curriculum in consultation with K-12 educators across the state. Once those standards are published, it's released to local localities who then have the options to actually implement it.
Okay, thank you. It was also mentioned in chat that I only recognize those favoring the resolution and none and those who did not. Of course, I did recognize 2 people who spoke against the motion, and I can only recognize people as they seek recognition on the floor. Mary Wagner did request the floor after Matt Bell, and Matt Bell got the floor and called the question. So unfortunately, Mary Wagner was not allowed to speak on the resolution, and I apologize for that. But that is the parliamentary procedure. I understand you asked to speak before, but Matt asked to speak before you, and that's how he got the floor before you. So if we were in a room, it would probably have been a little bit more clear. But I do apologize that those are the rules that we follow for parliamentary procedure. Okay, and our next section is, is there any other new business? Okay, last call for new business. Okay, we are into the section of announcements then. So are there any announcements? Wes Callender, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to let everybody know, in case you don't already know, that the Dulles area Democrats are going to have one of our famous breakfast buffets on Monday, December 6th. We have Delegate Marcus Simon will be talking about the Virginia redistricting. So we're looking forward to having a good discussion about that. We begin to meet at 7:30 a.m. to get food and coffee and network, and then at 8 a.m. our speaker will begin. That way people can go on to work and get there pretty much on time, or get back to your Zoom. This is at the Amphora Diner in Herndon at 1151 Eldon Street. And if you'd like to get tickets, you can email Allison Dickert, ALLISONDICKERT @gmail.com. And it's $30 pre-order, or you can just come in at the door for $35. That includes breakfast. Thank you.
Thanks, Wes. And I had breakfast a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, at that at Amphora. It was great. So thank you. Any other announcements? Matt Bell.
I guess since we're doing breakfast announcements, attend this event the last couple of years, it's back in person. our state senator in this area, Mount Vernon Lee, Scott Serval, is having a breakfast talking about how they're going to hold the line in the Senate. So if you're interested, Thursday, December 2nd, 7:30 to 9 a.m. And you can, it's at Primo Family Restaurant, and you can look that up. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. I'm getting hungry. Okay. Last call for announcements. Oh, okay. There's some more. More down here. Tim McBride, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note something I just added. The Virginia Grassroots Coalition, as many folks might know, meet once a month. Groups like Network Nova participate, and we're going to have a messaging workshop, or sorry, kind of working group on Tuesday, November 30th. So it sounds like some of the folks on this Zoom might be interested in that. And I'm going to talk to them a little bit about our purview in terms of how we work with party committees and kind of amplify any of the concerns we have from the election in terms of messaging and or organizing, things like that. I am the DNC's Virginia lead for their community organizing program. And so I want to try to bring some of the lessons learned from 2021 to the DNC to see if we can, have work together with more closely in a better way in 2022. So, feel free to check in with me or join us on Tuesday. Luisa's email is where you go to RCP.
I guess that was muted. All right, thanks, Jim. Next, Todd Thorwachter.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Just to note, for the last 4 years, we had been celebrating the fact that in 2017, 83% of Virginia's Asian Americans voted Democrat. And that did not reoccur, I'm pretty sure, this election, because anecdotally, we were seeing a lot of erosion with that and some minorities. And I was wondering if we'll be marshaling all the data and then trying to come up with some strategies on countering that. One thing which happened.
Do you want me to answer the question first?
Just in 2020, I think the fact that we very carefully avoided a lot of canvassing in person for social distancing when the Republicans didn't, that probably started things. But I've been noticing a lot of some erosion anecdotally in engaging these groups.
Yeah, we won't know for sure. I mean, we can look at turnout from precinct overall, but we don't really know who voted yet until we get that data from the Board of Elections from the state, and that gets loaded up. But we will definitely be looking at that, specifically as we, I mean, assuming that I'm involved in FCDC leadership next year, as we kind of plan strategy for next year, we should be specifically working on looking at that to determine our outreach strategy.
Well, by groups, it may be a little different. Rose Q got the information from the Asian American Justice League that did the exit polls in 2017. I'm not sure if they did it this year, but when we get the data together, we really should look at it and see what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Deborah Woolen, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'll keep it very brief. So I'm speaking on behalf of the state and local committee. We have an affordable housing task force. We're looking for folks to come alongside us and craft a resolution for the Board of Supervisors. In addition to having a couple of kind of education discussions for not only FCDC, but also for the public. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to Nora Dell, myself, or Liza, gosh, I don't want to butcher her last name, but Diliberti. So reach out to either one of us for more information. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Deborah. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So making sure I'm not skipping anyone who would like to speak under announcements. And seeing no additional hands then, there being no further business for this committee, we are adjourned. Our next meeting is our county reorganization meeting, which is January 11th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. Virtually on Zoom. Thank you all so much. I really do hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving, and let's just keep fighting on to next year. Thank you.